Well, Victor Marquez, I wanted to take this time and say welcome to Aaron's Opinion, formally, officially, as we say. So, and of course, I will certainly talk about this in the intro and the outro. But of course, I'll thank him right here live on the recording, as we
Mhm.
say. Thanks, our great friend Victor Gouveia from Whose Blind Life Is It Anyway? As a matter of fact, I have to say, Whose Blind Life Is It Anyway? That's quite a tongue twister. Has given us so many great guests, and I'm so appreciative of that. So thanks so much. Tonight's guest, friends with Victor from Whose Blind Life Is It Anyway? His name is Victor. No, I'm not confused. We have two people named Victor. So let's talk to Victor Marquez right here with a basically his product that he is in the process of launching and getting into is a product called This Accessible Life. Well, go right ahead. Who's Victor Marquez? What is this accessible life? Talk about whatever you want to talk about. You're on go.
Thank you, Aaron. It's a
My
pleasure to be
pleasure.
here. Pleasure to be here. So, this accessible life is something I'm launching, and it's a YouTube channel and podcast that I plan to launch and have already started. This is a forum where I want to talk about critical issues regarding accessibility, accessibility of technology, of apps, of life, things that we come across. I'm a guide dog user, things like that. And we'll talk about accessibility for guide dog users or people with blindness or low vision trying to access services. So I want to take different issues as they come up in my life and talk about them, talk about how I overcome things or how I live my life in the most accessible way, and talk about some of the things that are challenges for people and how we go about advocating to remove those challenges. Um, so I'm a Canadian originally. I grew up in Vancouver, and I moved to Michigan, Kalamazoo, Michigan, about 5 years ago. Married a wonderful woman here, and have since become a permanent resident here in the U.S. I am a graduate student at Western Michigan University. I'm just actually finishing my vision rehabilitation therapy degree, and I'm actually doing an internship right now at a training center where I'm teaching, and it looks like they'll hire me on fairly quickly here. So I'll have a career in the field very soon here in Michigan. And I want to stay here locally for now. I'm not interested in moving right at this point, maybe in the future, but not now. So that's my background. That's my second career. I'm 46. So in Canada, when I lived there, I worked for the Canadian government with Veterans Affairs. Uh, I helped the veterans get their medical benefits and so forth until the job became inaccessible when I lost the rest of my vision. And I realized just how difficult rehabilitation is in Canada. So I took the opportunity to avail myself of those services when I came here to the US. And I had already began teaching myself. I fell in love with helping other people in Canada with the process of learning technology and iPhone, JAWS, etc. I loved it. So I decided right then and there I was going to make that my second career. So when I came here to Michigan, it just happened to work out really well that one of the better schools in the country for vision rehab is right here in my hometown, and I signed up and I'm just about finished my degree. So that is my story in a nutshell. There's a lot more to it, but that's my background. I'm going to come at this YouTube channel and podcast from a vision rehab perspective. So I'll do some teaching, but
Mm-hmm.
at the same time, I also want to keep it normal and just like an everyday chat. I want to talk about practical things and how accessibility affects me in my life as a blind person living with a blind spouse and very little sighted help.
Well, I really appreciate this because I think that we are in desperate need of content creators like yourself who are willing to talk about these accessibility issues.
Mhm.
Let's start on the tech side. So if someone comes to you and they say, "Well, why should I listen to your podcast?" What specific issue in the technology field and what specific accessibility issue in the technology field do you want to solve, for society as a whole, and exactly what problem are you really going to, get into and dig into, on your podcast,
Mhm.
on your channel, and then in your professional life? I mean, where is this really going? Go ahead.
Well, that's a good question. I I'm a big advocate for universal design for applications in technology. So when something isn't accessible, I want to call it out. I want to show people how they can overcome those barriers, and so I'll do some teaching and some troubleshooting with technology, different technology and apps, to show how they can still be used, or ways that we can work around things. But I also want to have this as an opportunity to point out where some things could be designed better or improved upon, and not in a bad way. I just want to educate people. I want to educate users and the developers or producers of apps or technology. Um, this is also going to be kind of an introduction to the services that I'll offer as well, because I'll probably be employed by the state as a vision rehab therapist teacher, but I'll probably also offer some contract services on the side. I'll also offer some one-on-one training, some Braille transcription services, and some accessibility testing. So if people want me for those services, then they can find out how I teach, how I do things, and get in touch with me. And I think that podcast will be good for me to expose my skills to everybody.
I think it'll be excellent for it. And I think that, as I said before, we're in desperate need of someone who's willing to specifically tackle the issue of accessibility and only
Yes.
talk about that. Here's why I'm saying it. Because have you seen all these posts all over social media on any group for blind people? How do you do? How do you do? How do you do? What's the how do you? So clearly there's
There's a real need. Yeah.
evidently there's a gap in the amount of knowledge. Now, I'm not going to point any fingers or blame anyone, but the fact is, at some point when you're a successful blind person, you have to just figure stuff out.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, what tends to happen in the States, and it happens in Canada or really anywhere, but when blind people are children and teenagers in the States, we're basically, in my opinion, we're treated like a child until we graduate from university. So, and then at that point, you're expected to know everything. So it's really difficult for blind people to, fully understand everything that they need to learn. It's taken me about 6 or 7 years to figure out the stuff that I'm doing at my work, and then it took me another 2 or 3 years to figure out how to do a podcast. That's something that you have to learn. It's not something that you can just pick up and start doing.
Oh,
So
absolutely.
yeah, but everybody else thinks it is though. Everybody thinks, oh, you just push record and send it out. No, not quite. There's an art to it. There's definitely an art to asking people to come on, right? To networking with the right people, figuring out what your niche is. So once you figure out your niche, I think, well, for one thing, I think you're an excellent addition here at Aaron's Opinion, but I think that society needs to hear your content. So as far as the podcast itself goes, what are you thinking for your hosting service, and how are you going to organize your podcast? What are you thinking? I'm pleased to help with it.
Yeah, I've heard of Pinecast as a good service. Haven't really dug too deeply into it yet. I've created some content. I did a series of 8 lessons on a Braille display called the Mantis Key 40 that has just came out, and I released that to Victor Gouvea's channel.
That's all.
Yeah, and he's hosting that for now. As I get content together on a website designed, I may move that to my own service or whatever. But for now, I'm partnering with Victor's channel, or we'll share them in both places. I don't know, but I foresee, just going on what you were talking about. There's 2 things. I mean, technology changes so fast that we need to help people keep up and teach them the skills that they need to figure out new things or new technology, new apps as they come out. So you can receive training all you want, and that can get out of date fairly quickly. But also, I want to help people have the skills to problem solve and figure out, okay, this is, I'm stuck here. How am I going to figure out what I need to learn? Where am I going to look for the resources? And that's something I want to teach people as well, so that they can become more self-sufficient in finding the answers themselves too.
Definitely. Yeah. Yeah. Well, we're here at Aaron's Opinion. We use Anchor, which is really, really good because it does exactly What? No, no. Pinecast is fine.
Yeah,
Nothing.
I haven't made a decision yet where I'm going. So
Well, I would say start with Anchor. The reason I say that is because you can create very creative intros and outros.
mhm.
You can organize tracks if you're, if you know that you have several segments. Let's say that I was on this accessible life, right? Let's say that you had a conversation with me,
Mhm.
but before and after the conversation, you wanted to introduce me and then thank me in two separate tracks. Well, the great thing with Anchor is it has perfect organization. You can't. It's kind of you can't get it wrong. You can't make a mistake.
Great.
So it catches those types of things, and
Excellent.
then you can schedule when episodes come out. And, it's absolutely for what it is. It's perfect, and
Mhm.
it's carrying us all over the world. We have listeners
Excellent.
on
Very
all the
good.
continents. So yeah, that's really good. And then as far as the YouTube side, are you just going to upload the podcasts themselves to YouTube when you do it, or are you going to take a different approach with the YouTube side?
I think I will. I'll record in video. I mean, I've got a camera and I've got a phone that I can use for recording purposes and cut between them. I've got Reaper that I use, so I'm fairly familiar with how to edit videos spliced together. I'll probably do video podcasts that I can actually upload to YouTube, but they'll probably not be live. They'll probably be
No, yeah.
uploaded after the fact.
Yeah, I will tell you that your largest audience will be YouTube,
Yeah.
and that's always the largest one. Eventually, it starts to balance out. It's very strange. Most of the people who listen to Aaron's opinion are in the United States.
Hmm.
Most of the people who watch Aaron's opinion on YouTube are outside of the United States.
Hmm.
So you'll get different sides of the world, different parts of the audience.
Sure.
Anyway, that's really good. So what are some other accessible issues that you want to maybe ask me about, or get my input on, or talk about, or any other? What are some other accessibility issues that are really kind of bugging you that you really have to get off your chest?
Oh dear. Um,
Let's keep it a maximum of 50 issues. Okay.
50 issues, yeah. Where do I start? Um, let's see. Um, well, I am definitely proponent of using the iPhone, but I also use Android, and it's come a long way. I'm glad to see. I want to make sure that people have their choice when they choose a mobile operating system. Um, I guess I always get perturbed when iOS or when Apple strives to release a new version of iOS, like they're just doing this week, coming up with iOS 15. I was just reading through the AppleVis list of bugs, and there's still quite a bit. And it just seems like accessibility is never a primary thought. It always seems to come afterwards. It seems like um, they're always trying to catch up with fixing the bugs, and that's something that really bugs me that they can't get it right beforehand. So that's
Yeah.
something I want to make sure that people are aware of what the bugs are. For example, I mean, there are sources on the internet where you can find these things, but I'd like to make sure that people know what they're getting into before they upgrade and make sure that that's the right choice for them.
Right, right. Yeah, and in my opinion, has always been that like the old saying goes. How does it go? Something like, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And I
Exactly.
think
Yeah.
that, but the problem is that we've forgotten that saying,
Mhm.
because anytime something is working, that's the time when we want to fix. And anytime when we want to fix, it starts to work. So I think that we're putting out too much. I mean, I don't want to say we're putting out too much content,
Yeah.
globally, but in fact we are. And I think that we're pushing too many updates. Just
Yep.
let it simmer for
Yeah.
why do we need? I mean, I'm younger than you. I'm 30 years old. Why do
Okay.
we need all these extra things, extra updates, extra?
Yeah.
Why do we? Why? No, we
Well,
don't.
and the update cycle being every year, I mean, it's so that they can sell more products and release more features that they think will drive their product sales. I'm sure that's what it is, but really, if it is, you're right. If it isn't broken, why fix it? So, there's nothing wrong with staying with iOS 13 or 14 for a while, and once you know that all the bugs are out of it, then upgrade, or once you have the time to actually learn. You don't want to put it off. I mean, but you can certainly take your time making that decision to upgrade.
Right, right. Excellent, excellent. Okay.
Whereas I, as a teacher, cannot. I need to learn it, but that's fine. At least I'll learn it on a device that's not my main device,
Mm-hmm.
and I can help other people as they're ready.
Oh, sure, sure. That's really excellent. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think those are some really fair issues. What about a third accessibility thing? Any other huge things that you want to really, make my audience aware of about accessibility?
A lot of it has to do with attitudes of the public.
Mm-hmm.
I have worked in the medical field in a free health clinic, and there's so much bias in the medical community, for example, against people with visual impairment, that they're seen as broken people, or
Right.
incapable of caring for themselves. If they show up to a an appointment, for example, with someone, the other person is automatically assumed to be their caretaker, rather than the office staff taking the time to help them fill out paperwork that's inaccessible. They kind of say, here, you do it. Well, I'm blind too, I can't. That happens a lot when my wife and I go to appointments. There's an assumption that one of us must be able to see. So it's things like that. It's public attitudes towards blindness and low vision, that we're not capable, we're not um, able to be employed, we're not self-sufficient or independent. Those things need to be called out. Those things need to be We need to know how to educate in those situations, and call those things out and say, no, you, under the ADA, you need to be helping out here. You are providing information in paper form that's not accessible. Then find an alternative that will work. Ask the questions, or send me the forms in Word or doc format or PDF format beforehand, or something. There are other ways to make this happen. So
Right, right.
yeah, that's one thing.
Yeah. I'll tell you exactly why that is. I didn't end up releasing the podcast for other reasons, but I spoke to someone who, let me just phrase it like this. I have to be really careful how I phrase it.
Mhm.
I spoke to someone in the community, a person, and anyway, she was working as a occupational therapist,
Mhm.
and a rehab therapy for when people, get into an accident
Sure,
or things like that.
sure.
And she made a very interesting statement. She didn't want the episode to be published, so
Mhm.
we didn't publish it, and we aren't going to. But one interesting comment that she made when you brought that up about the medical thing is that she has found it to be true that people who work in hospitals or physical therapy,
Mhm.
occupational therapy, those people tend to have the lowest expectation for
Mhm.
people with disabilities and blind people,
Mhm.
because the only people they see are people who always have disabilities and can't do things because of an
Right.
accident.
Yep.
So that's why it's not appropriate. But I can philosophically understand where they would come up with that fallacy in their mind from. It's like
Yeah.
if you're around sick people and then blind people come in, you might think, well, blind people are sick, right? And
Right.
so that's where it comes from. I agree with you. I have found that in the medical field, the truth of the matter is that you can have, and I have, great doctors, fabulous doctors. You can be a fabulous doctor with absolutely horrific support staff.
Mhm.
And that is a very, very, very common thing in the United States. That people who are the support staff of great doctors don't want to do that job. So just it's just how it is here in the states. It's always been that way, and quite frankly, it just gets worse every year. So
Well,
you're absolutely right. Yeah, sure.
quite frankly,
Yeah,
Western medicine comes at medicine treatment from a medical model. Like, they have to fix the problem, whether it
right.
be with pharmaceuticals or treatment or whatever the case may be. That's how doctors and nurses and staff are taught in school. That's their approach. Um, I'm fortunate that I'm aware of that, but as a vision rehab, we take more of a social perspective, a social model, and that it's society's decisions to not make things accessible that are actually disabling for us. And that's how I look at things. And it's the choice of companies and government to not enforce accessibility standards to make things accessible from the start. That's actually what makes it inaccessible. And it's not easy because, there's so many different disabilities and conditions to accommodate that, it's hard to know, are you making this accessible for everyone or not? But it's a lot of choice in the design of things, and that's how I see things. And doctors and staff don't come from it from that point of view. When they're in school, they look, okay, how am I going to fix this problem? So I understand why it is. It's just we need to overcome that, and we need to educate medical staff with some empathy and some humanness.
Yeah. The problem is, and you don't know, obviously you don't know me well at all, but if you knew, no, you're in the right, and I'm supportive of you, and your thought process is the correct one. I'm just saying also too, I've spent a lot of time in hospitals, and I can totally understand where these doctors just aren't able to connect with the person, and they aren't able to connect with the person because if they did, they would never be able to fix anyone because they would become too spiritually attached.
Very true.
That's what the real reason is. It's exactly why doctors act like they don't care about people. If they cared, they would never fix you.
Yeah, that's true.
It's really weird. It's just bizarre, but that's why blind people typically have the worst experience in hospitals. And as long as we continue to run our hospital system in the States the way we are with the Western medicine practice, I don't see that ever going away. But you just have to educate people, guys, and just try to.
We can educate that blindness is not a disease or an illness. I mean, we can do that much.
True. But it's not. But what I'm saying is, you're right. But even after you and I do that, that's not going to change the philosophy and the psyche of a doctor who is in a hospital environment, sometimes 10, 12 hours a day. It's a mirror. It's a miracle they can do that, without going crazy themselves.
No, I get that for sure. I mean,
but no, you're right, and that alone is a really, that's a whole video all on its own about the different challenges that blind people face in accessing different civil services, from hospitals. Airports are another huge one. We were just talking about this. I was on someone else's show. It wasn't really a show. It was a conference that I know the person, so I was able to turn it into a podcast here at Aaron's Opinion. And one of the problems that I'm sure you've heard of in airports, and this will get to the guide dog thing in a minute, is that when blind people go to airports, the staff in the airports are oftentimes misinformed, uneducated, and unwilling to help blind people appropriately and respectfully.
Right.
And so I asked, and I'm hinting to you, as you can clearly tell, that probably something happened to me in an airport.
Yeah.
And the staff was behaving inappropriately. And I, wrote a letter to the CEO of the airline. It was bad enough where I had to speak to, someone at NFB and DOT, Department of Transportation. So that gives you a clue on how severe the issue is. And
sure.
Well, so then I was talking to my other friend, and he's not on the WhatsApp group, so it's a bit of a long story. But I was talking to my friend. He was the lawyer who was running it, and I said, "So what do you think is truly the cause of this?" And he says, "In certain environments in society," he says, "I suspect that the airports are paranoid about making sure that nobody gets hurt, and that there's probably some weird federal law or federal clause, legalese, that says under no circumstances can a person with a disability be injured on the premises of the airport." And that's his suspicion for why they're so weird in airports. It, again, doesn't make it right, doesn't make it appropriate, but you just have to keep pushing and keep educating and keep understanding at some level why you have to kind of keep your expectations low sometimes and realize that there's a certain things will never change. And that's go ahead.
And that's how I do things. I do. I'm pleasantly surprised when things go smoothly and I have a successful trip without any incidents. But I'm always ready to get my educational hat on and let them know how this is supposed to work.
Right. Yeah. So, by the way, I support guide dogs. I had a guide dog myself from Guiding Eyes for the Blind. So talk about your guide dog. Where's yours from?
Mine is from the Seeing Eye. He's my second dog.
Wonderful.
My first dog was from Guide Dogs for the Blind, actually, on the West Coast.
San Rafael, right? San Rafael or Portland, yeah.
Portland, yeah.
You went to the Portland campus.
Mm-hmm. And she was fantastic, and I really enjoyed that. But my wife, when I met her 5 years ago, she had 4 dogs from the Seeing Eye, and I decided that we should be going to the same school because I liked their philosophy and their traffic training. So I went there for my second dog, and he's a fantastic dog. Just he's just great.
Great, great. Yeah, and I went with Guiding Eyes for the Blind, not too far from Seeing Eye up in New York. So yeah, yeah, they're great too. And what about yours? Is yours a German Shepherd?
No, he is a black lab, and
Oh,
he's a male, 80 pounds, big boy,
oh wow.
solid, muscular, very strong. But
Hmm.
yeah, we walk really fast and we motor along, and he's great.
Right, right. Excellent. Yeah, mine was a girl black lab, Nani.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, my first was a yellow female that was like 48 pounds. She was a little
Oh
thing, but she had
goodness.
a lot of energy too.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah.
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah, she had a lot of energy. I noticed that because I had another dog too, another pet dog who was a yellow lab, and Nani, the black dog, the guide dog, would always have tremendous energy
Mhm.
at all hours, any day, no matter how hard we worked. If we were walking around our college campus or going out into the city, no matter what, she was always had that energy. It's
Yeah.
like where do they get it from? Can you give me some of that energy over here? Where do you get that from? They're,
I want
they are,
some of that. Yes.
yeah. Like how do you have that much energy? I don't get that. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So unfortunately, I've had accessibility issues with her occasion
Oh, of
or
course,
with the
me too.
dogs. I went back to Canada to visit one time, and I was refused 6 out of 8 times in one weekend by taxi service. And I actually ended
Uh
up
huh.
doing a story with the CBC and
Yeah,
on awareness. So you just sometimes you have to speak up. You have to be willing to take the time to do an interview or to say why this is an important issue to bring to light. And
exactly,
so yeah.
exactly. And that's why I love podcasting as a hobby for me because I really believe that us blind people, us successful blind people, need to start speaking up and reaching out to each other and helping each other out. And we need to start talking about these things,
Mhm.
no matter what they are. So I think that's a really big one. Uber. I mean, gosh, we've talked about that whole accessibility. We've
Yeah,
talked that one to death.
of
We've
course.
talked it to death. To death.
I love Kalamazoo because it's such a blind friendly city. There's quite a population of blind or low vision people. So
Really?
we usually don't have the access issues with Uber or Lyft here.
Well, I think that so. I think that when a certain town has a lot of people with disabilities, I think the town starts to understand.
Yeah.
Yeah. And certain cities and states are like that. Florida is probably more accessible.
Mhm.
Why? Because they have a lot more people who are elderly and probably have some form of blindness, low vision, something else, all of the above, right?
Yeah.
But if you go to these states with, a large younger population,
Right.
able-bodied, they don't, they just they have to see it to understand it.
Yeah.
And I think that's a lot of what's really happening. I meant to ask, by the way, there's a lot of confusion around the community about. You say you want to be like you're studying vision rehabilitation. So can you
Mhm.
define that for us and tell the listener and remind me exactly what is that and what does that entail and mean and all of that?
Sure. Vision rehabilitation therapists are certified by the ACVREP Association of, don't ask me to, it's
Well,
a
you probably you
vision
started to.
rehabilitation,
Well, you know what? You don't ask yourself. You're the one who
yeah,
started to try to figure it out. Just keep
right?
going. Keep going. Okay, go.
Association of Certified Vision Rehabilitation and Education Professionals. I got
That's exactly what it is. Just,
it.
you know what? We're gonna say that's correct. Okay, keep going.
Okay.
Yep. Okay.
I'm pretty sure that's what it is. Anyway, it's a certifying body nationally. So there are training centers that hire people that don't have that certification and accreditation, but people that have that have not only done a master's degree in vision rehab, but they've also done an internship and written a certifying exam. They're also having to do continuing credits every year to maintain that. So we're professionals, and when
Great.
we finish that degree and certification. So as a vision rehab, we're certified to do assessments for low vision and technology. We do a lot of teaching in lots of areas, but that includes independent living, braille, technology, iPhone, computer, whatever it is, anything. Um, and we can, we can even do some starting O&M indoors, things like that. So Most of the VRT, most of the VRT professionals either work for states or nonprofit rehab agencies, and they're employed. They go into people's homes or workplaces to try to make things accessible, teach them how to use the software and the technology, make sure that they can get to and from work and live independently so that they can get to work. A lot of it's tied to the vocational rehab system, of course. So the end goal is to get to work eventually. So whether that's helping somebody get their workplace adapted to what they need, or whether it's getting them ready for school so that they can get the training that they need before going to a workplace, it's all geared towards education and employment.
I have a follow up question. I heard you use the word rehab.
Mm-hmm.
So, I'm a teacher. Actually, you don't really know much about my background at all, but I teach English as a second language.
Okay.
I heard the word rehab.
Yeah.
So, as a blind person who's been blind my whole life, I have never felt the need to be rehabilitated. In other
Sure.
words, I've never felt the need, I've never felt that blindness is a loss because I was born
Yeah.
blind with glaucoma. Also, I forgot if I mentioned. So I also have a congenital heart defect. I
Okay.
forget if I ever said that. But anyway, I've never felt that something was wrong with me.
Yeah.
I will go out of my way to tell you all the things that are wrong with other people. But I'm perfect. Nothing's wrong with me. So why do you use the word? And I think that it's important because blind people are sensitive about it.
Sure.
What's that word rehabilitation? There's nothing wrong. Why do you have to be rehabilitated?
I agree with you, actually. I don't like the word rehabilitation. I use it because that's what our official title is. That's what the
Right.
centers are called. They're all called rehabilitation training centers. I prefer blindness skills training for what I like to call it, because well, we work with adults and transition age, so we're not working with kids. That's a whole different area of education that I'm not working with. Um, you need a degree in education and being a teacher for the visually impaired to do that. But so I'll work with 14 and up, all the way into elderly and old age. And like I said, rehabilitation is not the correct term in my view. We need to teach people the skills that they need when they need them. So that will change throughout a person's lifetime. You may know some things now, or you may have some skills, but you need to learn new technology to pursue a new career that you have in your dreams, or you found a job and you're starting in a month or so, but things need to be adapted for you to be efficient and successful and keep that job. It's not just a question of getting the job. You have to be able to keep it, and you want to be the most productive and as productive as anyone else doing that job. So I look at it as not really rehabilitation, because there's nothing wrong with you or I or anyone that's blind or visually impaired. We just have a different way of doing things. And so that's my outlook towards things. I see my role is my role should be facilitating people to learn the skills that they need when they need them.
Right, right. I think it's important if you can get that word changed. I don't know,
Yeah.
contact and obviously I'm being facetious, but
Yeah.
if you could contact who's ever in charge of that national organization, that
Uh,
organization,
yeah.
and
That's going
seriously,
to be that's going to be a tough sell, because even the federal government calls it the Rehabilitation Services Administration.
but here's,
There-
well then, okay, well, but then
yeah.
here's why I'm saying it.
Mhm.
I think that blind people are offended by that term rehabilitation.
I
So I
agree.
think you guys would lose customers, and that it's a turnoff and
Yeah.
a point of intimidation for blind people
Sure.
to approach you. Even if you're a even if you're a great counselor,
Mhm.
it's a point of intimidation. In other words, they wouldn't want your help because they would think it's rehab.
Right.
I think that's
Yeah.
a huge thing, actually. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I tend to agree with you. We need to meet people where they are, and if they don't need to necessarily be rehabilitated. They need to access the services that they need, and
Right.
we should
Exactly.
call it blindness services or something different.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. So then, exactly what would you like to do after you complete your training or your certification? What is the dream or the goal here?
I'm happy where I live right now, and I think for now, I see in the next few years staying here and working with the state as a vocational teacher, in that area, in that field of providing services. And so I see providing services on the side as well. Some accessibility testing, braille transcription, one-on-one teaching with whatever people need. I'm happy to teach remotely or to teach people locally as well. So I'm just happy to help where I can. That's how I see it.
That's really good. That's really good. So before you, well, for one thing, overall, I mean, you have a lot of really on point ideas. You're definitely someone that, we need in the community. No
Mhm.
question. But really, what tipped you over as far as motivating you all the way to start a podcast and YouTube channel about your thoughts and about these different issues?
Most of the podcasts that I listen to are with respect to accessibility and tech. So I listen to a lot of the blindness podcasts that are out there on accessible technology, because I like to keep on that cutting edge of what's coming out, what's new, and so I don't want to take the place of any of them. They're all fantastic. They all have their special niche of providing great information, but I just want to add to it. And so that's kind of what tipped me to start. And I've also, another thing for me is that I've been involved with Toastmasters for several years. And as I developed my confidence in public speaking, I would have never thought of pursuing this maybe 5 years ago, but I'm confident. I'm happy to share what I know, and I'm not always right, of course, but I'm happy to help where I can, and to be helpful, to provide information, to steer people in the right direction, or the direction to information and resources. So I'm happy to share my skills that I acquired, my knowledge, but also practice my confidence in public speaking. So
That's excellent. Yeah, well, see, for me, I was already speaking and teaching for like 6 years, and I'm someone who just loves to talk all day. So I've always had the motivation to talk and use the voice I was given. So for
mhm.
me, the overcoming the public speaking was never something, luckily, that I needed to overcome
Right.
because I just love talking. I just love being a public speaker and being a voice. But for a lot of people, it's hard. It would be very difficult for
It
most
is.
people, I think, to
It's
really.
intimidating for sure. And like I said, 5 years ago, I would be hiding behind a computer or a music keyboard. I also do some digital music. I'd be hiding behind a technology and not speaking. But I like the idea of doing both, of sharing my love of the technology and speaking together.
I agree. I agree. And so, when you aren't doing all of these projects, how are you spending your time? What are some of your most unusual and unexpected hobbies?
I just got a grill this summer. I love grilling. So I've
Ah,
been becoming a grill master, or at least I hope I am. But things have turned out really well. I've done some really nice, some cool things with that. I
I know a grilling expert.
Oh, okay. I'll have to get in touch with them.
Yeah, yeah. What grill did you buy?
I got a Weber. I'm pretty happy with it.
Oh,
Mhm.
okay, okay.
With a digital, or with a Bluetooth thermometer that's accessible on my phone, so I can monitor temperature, and the rest I do by feel or time. So, yeah.
I see. I see.
Hmm.
Yeah, I'm sure you know of the great podcast in our community, a blind grilling experience, I believe.
Yeah, I've heard different podcasts on that, and so excited to learn more from other people so that I can become better too.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
And besides that, I try to unwind. I listen to books. I watch some TV once in a while. When I come home, I try to relax. I'm busy all day, 8 to 5. So, my home time is my relaxation time. And I go on Clubhouse. I talk to people sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
And let's see, what else do I do? Play some blind sports. I play goalball. I don't know if you've ever heard of goalball, but
I
it's a
certainly have.
it's a fast-paced, active sport. I love it. It gets me active and gets some of my energy out, which is good. And I played blind hockey before too.
Oh, excellent. That's really
I mean, I
good.
wouldn't be Canadian if I didn't play hockey, right?
Right.
So,
And to turn the interview around a little bit, I'm sure that you have a lot of questions for me.
of
So,
course,
yeah,
yeah.
what do you want to know about me?
Well, you've dropped a few hints along the way about what you do. You're an English teacher and English as a second language teacher. And how long have you done that? And what was your background getting there?
Well, I got there because I studied international affairs in university,
Mhm.
and I got out of university and I needed to start working. And what was happening was I wasn't really finding a job in my career field, but I noticed that throughout university, I had a lot of opportunities to teach people. And each time I taught someone, I enjoyed it more and more. So then it occurred to me, well, maybe I'm supposed to get into teaching. So I did. And I found out about a company, we'll call it Company X.
Mhm.
And they said, we're hiring. You can work from home online on our platform. And outside of the podcast, it has been basically the number one thing in my life for 6 years.
Okay.
So that's how I got into it. And then the podcast developed, as I've kind of hinted to it too, is that I was listening to a lot of podcasts around the blindness community like you. And I felt what I noticed was that there was this always a lot of barriers to entry. And I wanted to create an environment where blind people from every country can come and share their story
Mm,
and to be really open. And I think that there's, my blunt opinion about it is that us blind people are not always open when we need to be.
yes.
And that's going to be something that will really, really cost us later, that we really need to fix that. So
Yeah.
we really, really, really need to start coming onto each other's podcasts, being, comfortable sharing guests if they want to be shared, being working more together is what I want to really
Mhm.
impress upon people here at Aaron's Opinion. So yeah, definitely.
I'm a strong believer that we can learn a lot from other countries and other systems, and what works well, what doesn't. I've had some experience to the Canadian system, but and now the American. But there's value in what people are doing overseas too, in the UK and Australia and other English-speaking countries, learning from their system. Some of them are really good, and we can learn a few things from them. They can learn a few things from us. I think that sharing of information is really important, and I'm
It
glad
is.
glad you've got that global reach.
Oh, I prefer international recordings. I mean
Mhm.
I prefer this recording. I prefer every recording, but especially international recordings because that's where you can really get your reach. There's
Mhm.
a large part of the world down in Latin America is not connected to the podcast sphere, and it's a
Right.
big problem. I've had a couple experts on the show already. Two Mexican content creators who've spoken extensively on the challenge that it is if you grow up in Mexico or any Latin American country, Central American country, as far as access to knowledge, right? That's a
Mhm.
huge issue there. I've spoken with people in Africa. We've had people even from Uganda here at Aaron's Opinion. I mean, we have all the continents: Gambia, South
Nice.
Africa, India, Australia, Nepal, even all
Mhm.
sorts of all sorts of countries. But it's good because Philippines too. But these are the countries that really need a podcast.
Yes.
These developing and quite frankly these third world countries are countries that need something to listen, need some knowledge that we can hopefully provide.
Right. And they can take that knowledge and say, this is what we need here and start something.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly, and they actually have.
Mhm.
I've talked to
Good.
people who've started podcasts just because of what I'm doing here, and I think that's so touching.
Yeah.
And so inspirational that they're that motivated to start their own opinion show or something like that. So when is this accessible life business? When can we start tuning into these episodes, and when is it going to start coming out as a podcast? And are you just going to keep using Whose Blind Life? Is it any way to upload the videos, or are you going to morph it back to your channel? What do you think you're going to do for that?
Yeah. I'm eventually going to morph it back to my channel. I've been learning WordPress slowly. I need to get some time to devote to that so that I can get my website done and up. Once it is, I'll upload the series that I've already shared with Victor. For now, I will probably just continue to create some content to share on Victor's channel for the moment. I foresee them being in both places eventually. For the foreseeable future, I'll share my content with him for his network, but I'll also get them up on my website. And then I also, as I said, I wanted to launch my website to promote the services that I offer. And yeah, at some point I may just do my own channel. I don't know, but for now, and Victor and I have a good partnership,
Excellent.
and I'm glad that he's got things figured out because I have not really had the time to do that. I've got a lot going on personally with a sick relative that I've been caring for,
Oh, oh no. Oh
um,
gosh.
as well as doing my internship, which is full time 40 hours a week, and
Yeah.
finishing up my degree. So I had a lot on my plate this past year. Plus, I had heart surgery myself, so
Oh my gosh.
it's
Whoa,
been
whoa.
it's been a
Oh well,
crazy.
and I have what's wrong with my heart specifically. I was born with TOF, tetralogy of flow.
Okay.
So I'm very comfortable talking about that.
Hmm.
It's totally none of my business. But
Right.
if you don't mind me asking, what prompted heart surgery for you? What's going on with that?
I
If you don't
was
mind.
I was feeling fine until last fall, and all of a sudden I just started feeling tired and funny.
Ooh,
Had some chest pain.
ooh boy.
Got a heart cath done after a few other tests that didn't show anything, and they said, "Oh, you've got 4 blocked arteries, so quadruple bypass,
Uh,
sir."
ooh. Okay, all right. Don't scare me. I almost took too much air in there. Okay,
Yeah, yeah,
that. Okay, let. I'm glad you're well.
yeah. I'm doing fine now.
Let's just say that. Glad you're well. Oh man, oh man. Maybe who knows what caused that. That sounds like something that was
There's
hiding in your genetics is what that sounds like.
there's some higher cholesterol issues in my genetics, yeah, that
Yeah, yeah.
we didn't know
That'll
about.
do it. That'll
Mhm.
do it. Yeah, I see. I see.
And diabetes. There for a time I didn't take great care of myself, but I've committed to
Sure.
exercising and eating well now, and I'm feeling much better. Got my energy back. Feeling great,
But
and
that's good information to know. I think a lot
mhm.
of people who might have something wrong with their heart and know that it's fine, they always wonder, hey, well, how do you tell if something's wrong? Well, like you said, a tremendous loss in energy, and you
Yeah,
just start feeling sick, I guess, and then you
take
just
it
figure,
seriously. Get it
yeah,
checked out. I was afraid to because I don't have
sure,
insurance. I'm Canadian. I'm not working, so I don't have insurance,
yeah,
and
yeah,
I still have a Canadian income pension from there, so I didn't qualify for Medicaid.
mm,
Fortunately, I have one of these health sharing plans that you can buy into, and you can send your bills to them, and they'll pay your bills. One of the Christian ones, and it worked. They paid for my surgery and all my aftercare, and I
oh.
got the care that I needed. So I was a little afraid to use it, but I decided,
Well,
yeah,
you know
this
what?
is not something
I'd
you play
be.
with.
No, no, no. You know what? Any great doctor would tell you, no, definitely don't mess around with it. And I would be more, I would be scared just because it's a surgery and because anything
Yeah.
can happen once you're under and on the table.
Oh, that
I,
too.
yeah, I wouldn't be nothing personal. I wouldn't be so scared about the money. The money doesn't scare me. The thing that
Yeah.
scares me is doing the surgery.
Oh,
That's what
yeah.
would scare me.
Oh, at the time I was scared for the surgery, and then
Of course, that's
I was
truly
also like,
terrifying.
okay, I can't have $1 million bill after this either. But I was more worried about getting the surgery, which is why I did.
Right. Well, that's wonderful.
Yeah,
That's not wonderful, but you know what I mean.
yeah,
I'm really glad you're well, and thank you
yeah,
for and thank you for taking care of your heart. I am not a doctor, I'm not a cardiologist, but thank you. So many people don't take care of their heart, and then it sneaks up on them when you least expect it. So that's so good, man.
yeah,
Well,
and
that sounds like an action-packed year. I admit that you brought up a surgery. I'll tell you, I had to have a surgery on one of my eyes with my glaucoma.
mhm,
It's glaucoma,
mhm,
but one of my eyes had a calcium buildup and started to get all messed up. So they had to knock me out and scrape off the calcium, which was
sure,
quite stressful for me when it happened. But now my vision is like perfectly stable now, and I'm overall, I think about this every day. My stability and vision is tremendously improved, and it was so terrifying when they had to say, "No, we're gonna have to knock you out and actually scrape this off." That was
yeah,
so terrifying, and I was so upset because I'll tell you why it's very funny. Because the majority of my surgeries that I've had in my life have been done when I was a baby. So like now I'm 30. It was basically the first time going into the hospital, being aware of it. The first time. Oh, but I got to say, I am so glad that they did the right thing and that it was definitely the right choice. So, yeah.
yeah. More often than not, the medical system is fantastic. They know what they're doing. They know what they need to do. So it's there are always problems, of course, that come up or
Sure.
unexpected things, but more often than not, when something comes up, go with it and make sure that you get the treatment you need.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. All right. So what other questions do you want to dig into with me, with my life, my podcast, my beliefs? What do you really want to know? Really, really dig in, because
Yeah,
I love hard
sure,
questions.
sure. Um, where do you see this podcast going for you?
Well, what I want to do is to be able to make my motto come true. Of course, you know what the slogan is, right?
Hmm.
What's the slogan here at Aaron's Opinion?
Actually, I don't remember. I've heard it,
Okay.
but I don't remember.
Help one person today, help 1 million
Okay,
people tomorrow, right?
tomorrow. Okay.
So the goal is to really help one person at a time. That's
Yeah.
that's the trick. That's where it goes. If you only help one, you help 1 million.
Yeah.
So that's where I want it to go.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Help who's in front of you right now. And yeah.
right,
Hmm.
right. And people secretly notice that when you're only helping one person perfectly, people notice, and
Hmm.
then they want to get in line. They want to be the next one to be helped. So yeah.
Good. All right.
So
Um,
yeah.
I'm just trying to think of any other questions I might come up with.
Well, here. So now your blindness, though, maybe I missed it, but were you always blind, or did you become blind later on in life?
I have Leber's congenital amaurosis, which is a genetic disease. It
Hmm.
presents similar to RP, but it's not RP. It's the constellation of similar symptoms, but it's different. um, and so I never had any peripheral vision really beyond 10 or 15 degrees. But my central vision was really good growing up until age 35. I had like 20/60 in my right eye and 2200 in my left, and it was definitely good enough to read. A lot of times I didn't even need magnification. I ended up, when I was at work in Canada, I ended up using Zoom text sometimes at 1.5x or 2x to magnify a little and just give my eyes a break. But most of the time, I didn't really need assistive technology. Um, and then I had some macular edema, which happens sometimes in that disease, where the central vision gets all, where the macula gets swollen and affected, and you lose that central vision. So what I've got left is shapes and light, very blurry, but I have no acuity really left in my center. And and I still have that. So, I mean, I use what residual vision I have a little bit, but most of the time I try to operate as if I can't see because I really can't trust that vision at all. So,
Yeah, yeah, and that's truly the spectrum of blindness. That with a lot of different conditions, you can have vision. The vision fluctuates violently and tremendously. You know,
mhm.
throughout the day or throughout the time of year or whatever it is. So
Yeah.
yeah, I completely get that. Yeah. Um,
So
but if you
fortunately, that central vision that I had allowed me to do a lot when I was young. I was able to ride a bike and I did a lot of traveling before I was 30, before I got married the first time and settled down. And so, I enjoyed life and did some of the things I wanted to do back then. And I'm glad that I did.
right, definitely. Where have you traveled to outside of Canada and the States? Where else have you been around
Mhm.
the world?
Well, I've pretty much been all over, or a lot of places in Canada and the US, but I've also spent several summers in Europe. My parents are originally from Portugal. I was born in Canada, but they were from Portugal. So I went
Oh,
back
that's
there
right.
many times to visit. I also have friends, or I also have family in France, just outside of Paris. So I've been to there 3 or 4 times as well.
Oh,
And
excellent, excellent. You know that I speak French. Je parle français.
oh, bien sûr. Oh, very good. So I learned a little bit of French in Canada because it is our second language. But I took some in university level, like first year French. But that was a long time ago. That was when I did my bachelor's in the 90s, mid 90s. So I forget a lot of it. I understand it still, and very much like my Portuguese, I understand it all if someone's speaking, but I have a difficult time pronouncing the words now
Yeah, getting
because
the so you can so if your French relatives are speaking, you understand them. But as far as
yes,
repeating it back, getting
yeah.
that part of it, it's always a little bit more
Yeah,
difficult.
it's I can try to say a few words here and there, but it's very broken.
I see. I see. Yeah, yeah. That's why it's important to go to France a lot and to
Hmm.
put yourself in those situations of needing to use the language. 'Cause that's very interesting. You didn't mention that when you were speaking to Victor, I guess.
No. Well,
That's
there's only so much you can talk about in an hour.
that's indeed, indeed. That's very interesting. I notice it seems like Canada has a very large Portuguese population.
Yeah, mostly in the Toronto area and some scattered throughout. Well, in British Columbia, where I'm from, there's some in the Vancouver area and a little bit in outside of Vancouver, but mostly in the bigger centers, Toronto, Montreal, and Vancouver.
Sure, sure. And specifically, what part of Portugal where did were you born in?
I was born in Vancouver, so
Oh,
I was
you were
born.
born in Canada.
Mhm.
Okay.
My brother was not. My brother was born in Portugal and came over
Mm-hmm.
already with them. And my brother has a very much more severe case of the Leber's amaurosis than I do because it can manifest with some cognitive delays and complete blindness, and that's what he's got. He's got the complete blindness, and he's on the level of about a 5-year-old. So unfortunately, that's the cards that he was dealt. But he's enjoying life. So he came over with them. I was born in Vancouver, but they are from the coastal region near the north, near Porto. So just about an hour south of Porto, between Porto and Lisbon,
Oh,
on the coast.
yeah. Being that I don't speak Portuguese myself, I've never been to Portugal or
Mm-hmm.
Brazil or any of those and any of those countries. It's very interesting. Yeah,
I
yeah.
loved it there. I really did. And at some point, I definitely want to go back to visit aunts and uncles and cousins. But I have no idea what the future holds for me. I don't know if I'll be staying here long term or going there or going back to Canada. I really don't know right now. I'm letting life take me where God wants to lead me. So we'll see where it goes.
Right. Sure. Sure. And then who are the French relatives? Is it a cousins that ended up in France, or that's also
Yeah,
very interesting.
aunts and uncles, brothers and sisters of my dad that moved to France, and my parents went to Canada, they went to France, so they've
I
established their lives there. The kids were born there, my cousins, so they've got their connections. But
I see. I
it's
see.
fantastic. I loved it there too. I did the tourist thing with them, and
Hmm.
so it was really nice.
Yeah, yeah. So then you were able to go into Paris and do all of the tourist things in
Yeah,
Paris.
they live in Saint Germain, which is just outside of Paris, and yeah, so we did all the Arc de Triomphe, the Eiffel Tower. We did all those things, and different monuments and cathedrals and all the historical sites. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, and I prefer going to the smaller cities in France that
sure.
are more in the country. But for that, you have to speak French the whole time, which I can do.
Hmm.
But it's very, very interesting to be in communities in France where it's just French people, with no
Yeah.
global. Not that Paris isn't amazing. I've actually never been there. Yeah, I speak French. I've never been to Paris. Um,
Mm.
but but yeah, that is very, very interesting.
Yes.
So anyway, as we start to, as I would say, as we start to wrap it up on
Hmm.
another really, 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 really fascinating episode. I want to take this time to say thank you, Victor. But by the way, thank you and thank you to Victor Marquez for joining me. But thanks, Victor Gouveia, for suggesting Victor Marquez. See, Victor and Victor. See, it's very confusing, and
Yeah, I
it's more
know.
confusing because here in the states, Victor is not nearly as common of a name as it is in Canada.
Right.
But anyway, so do you have any parting words? Any final statement that you want to say?
Well, I just want to encourage people that if they have, don't let anything stop them from what they want to do. If they have, I mean, obviously, we're not going to be truck drivers, long haul truck drivers, or maybe pilots. Maybe one day we can be. I don't know. Maybe with the self driving trucks, we can be truck drivers too. But no, just I mean, there are realistically things that we shouldn't be doing. But most of the time, anything that we put our minds to as a blind or visually impaired person, we can do. And seek out the services that are available to you, especially in a first world country like ours. There's so much available, and internationally, seek out what you have in your country. Seek out online resources. There's a lot you can learn from YouTube, from the web, from what other people have put out there, and if I can help somebody, that's what I want to do, and that's what I'd like to see other people do. Is once they have the skills that they're confident, or if they've learned something in a specialized area, share it with people. And we're a community. We need to prop each other up and show each other that it can be done and how it can be done. So I would just encourage everybody to get out there,
Sure.
and be active.
Thanks so much. Is
Yeah.
there do you have a personal website or a way that someone can get in touch with you?
For now, I'll just leave my email address. It's therealvictormarques, TherealVictormarques.
Okay, I'll just copy. How about I'll just put your email in the description if you want people to
Sure,
have that.
that's fine. At gmail.com. And I'm going to have thisaccessiblelife.com. I already own the domain. I just have to get my website designed and up. But if you want to go to thisaccessiblelife.com eventually, that's where you will find my website.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. Well, thanks so much. It was a really great episode, everybody. So yeah, if you have questions, reach out to Victor. Thanks, Victor, and of course, thanks, Victor. Okay. No, I'm not letting that go. Take care, everybody. Have a good night.